left to right. Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
What is up, everybody? It is Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Welcome to Party on Broad, our second episode of the Philly Phrenzy, where we're going to recap everything, all the top headlines in Philly sports. Joining us today, we have Brock Landis. Check him out on Twitter, at LandisBrock. What's up, Brock?
My guy, Chris, you know I love these Fridays. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Happy Friday to you, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's get the weekend started.
Let's get started. Back on Monday, Ben Simmons had a 30-point-plus triple-double in a 117-111 victory over the Brooklyn Nets. What was your reaction to that, man?
An incredible game, and Ben Simmons was incredible. I mean, that's the only adjective, the first one that comes to mind. When he's on the attack, when he's aggressive, when he's in the open court, he's merely impossible to guard. And prior to this game, he was averaging almost 24 points a game on 65.7% true shooting. He had the fifth most made field goals in the NBA, the fifth most total assists in the NBA, and he made the sixth most passes in the NBA over a 5-game span. And yet, through those 6 games, he only had 11 turnovers. That's including the Brooklyn game. Defensively, he was phenomenal. He came in 10th in the NBA with overall defensive rating. In the fourth quarter, his defensive rating over that 5-game span, 76.3, the first in the NBA, and he was holding opponents to 28.3% from beyond the arc. When your point guard, or for that matter, anybody on the floor can play that well, they're an MVP caliber player, and Ben Simmons most definitely looked like one that week.
Absolutely, and the other big storyline I thought of that game was Matisse Thybulle. In his last 4 games at that time on Monday, dude, he had 18 deflections, 9 blocks, 9 steals, and a 93.8 defensive rating. I don't even think he made it into the Rising Stars game. I think Matisse is only going to get better from here out. More playing time, and what's your take on Matisse so far?
Unfortunately, his defense is widely underrated. And
crazy. In
watching the 76ers, you can attest to this. I have never seen a defensive player as good as Matisse Thybulle at this age, especially at the inception of his NBA career. He should be a kid out there. Most rookies play subpar defense, especially in their first season and their first couple of months, but Matisse Thybulle has thrived in this role. He was holding opposing pick-and-roll ball handlers to 29.6% from the field, 34 of 115, which was the first in the NBA, a minimum of 100 possessions. That's of any player in the NBA, and you know the Sixers' woes against the pick-and-roll. So to have a guard that's that good against opposing pick-and-roll ball handlers, it's phenomenal. Now, to add to that, he had the 4th best opponent three-point percentage in the NBA, a minimum of 30 games played and 3 field goal attempts. He was holding them to 27.5% from beyond the arc, a little bit better than Ben Simmons. And don't forget, Simmons is 6'9", so with that wingspan, you can really get in the way of a shot. Matisse Thybulle is a lot smaller. So the fact that he's holding percentages much lower than Ben Simmons indicates how good he is around the perimeter. And again, he was holding opponents to 38% from the field total, which was 8th in the NBA. To have these numbers as a rookie and not get the recognition he deserves, it's disappointing, it's upsetting, but at the same time, I'm almost glad, because if you as an opponent want to bring people against Matisse Thybulle or have people switch on Matisse Thybulle, go ahead. But I guarantee you he can clamp your favorite player.
It's crazy, man. You look at Matisse's shooting over the last week, he's not shooting that well, but his defensive impact is so great for all the numbers you just indicated that he's got to be on the court. And it's just, oh man, it's just been just a blast watching him just blossom over the last couple of weeks. Also on Tuesday, the Flyers shut out Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-0. Travis Konechny, man, just having a phenomenal season. The Flyers penalty kill has been one of, if not the best in the NHL of late. And Konechny is tied with Coots in points. Talk to us a little about Sean Couturier.
Couturier, great, but in that game, it was really Kevin Hayes. My apologies. If you want to talk about penalty kill and great defense, I'd put Hayes there. He did very well, but even Brian Elliott, I was looking towards. In the absence of Carter Hart, we talked last week. How was Brian Elliott going to step up, and given his history, he has struggled lately. But, I mean, Brian Elliott in that game, he was tested and he answered. And he did very nicely. And it was probably the Flyers' most impressive win to date this season now. 27, 17-6, 10 points over 500. You talked about Couturier. I mean, a two-way center man, 27 years old. He has been phenomenal. Phenomenal. He is tied for the first in team lead for points, 43. First in assists on the team, second in shots, second in face-off win percentage, second in takeaways, second in plus-minus, and fourth in ice time per game. I'll also add this, according to NBC Sports, among NHL forwards since 2017, Couturier is the only one to rank in the top 10 of even strength points and shorthanded time on ice. So when you get that contributions from your two-way center man, it's awesome. And like I said, Brian Elliott, he also had a very nice game. So that Pittsburgh, it was some very heavy implications. Again, my apologies. Against Pittsburgh, there were some great implications there.
And then another reason for success is Jacob Voracek, man. Over the last 28 games, going back to November 23rd, dude, this guy has 25 points, 6 goals, 19 assists, and a plus 14 rating. And over the last 2 weeks, the Flyers have taken down the Caps, the Bruins, the Blues, and the Penguins, who are the top 4 clubs in the NHL standings, man. Is it spring yet? Because I'm just ready for Sixers and Flyers playoffs, baby.
Yeah, but don't go too far ahead, because when we talk about spring, we're going to have to allude to the Philadelphia Phillies. So, Chris, let's hear what you got.
All right. Also happening on Tuesday, the Phillies made some major signings, adding ex-Pirates reliever Francisco Liriano, Nationals closer Drew Storen, and ex-St. Louis Cardinals reliever Bud Norris to minor league deals. Just kidding, man. Is this an awful offseason? What's going on with the Phillies, man?
I think it has to be, and you got Clentech and an organization that likes to spend their money on players that have an injury history and are aging very poorly. And Francisco Liriano, Bud Norris, Drew Storen, all on minor league deals. They might have been intriguing 3-4 years ago, but in 2020, given the landscape of Major League Baseball and the problems that have riddled Philadelphia and the pitching staff, I only see this as moves to add depth rather than talent. But when you bring in somebody like Liriano, Bud Norris, Storen, they're not going to be making huge contributions. This is just if a couple of your players go down in the bullpen, you have a backup plan, or even if people are underperforming, you can have temporary fills. But I'm not going to get excited about minor league contracts that aren't even probably going to come to fruition, right? Neil Walker, Josh Harrison, Francisco Liriano, Andrew McCutcheon. We love Kutch, but it almost feels like the Phillies are trying to reunite something that sparked in 2015, except it's 5 years too late. So for Liriano, I'm slightly okay because he pitches very well against lefties, and he does have a 9.01 strikeout per 9-inning rate over 419 career games. But again, he's a guy with injury history. Drew Storen was pitching in Double-A a season prior. Bud Norris didn't make a major league appearance in 2018, I believe. So these are just signings to bolster depth, but in my opinion, it's nothing to get excited about. And this was a very underwhelming free agency, especially given who was available. And there's even rumblings in Colorado that Nolan Arenado is struggling with that organization, and there's drama ensuing. And yet Philadelphia remains quiet on pursuing a generational third baseman defensively and offensively. So, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head. This was a very underwhelming offseason.
It's been just a brutal offseason for the Philadelphia Phillies. The Zach Wheeler signing showed a spark in the front office that they actually might know what they're doing. But, dude, I like Joe Girardi. I love that hiring. I think he's going to be good. But you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. This is going to be a very tough season for the Phillies. Going back to Nolan Arenado, would you trade Spencer Howard or Alec Bohm for Nolan Arenado? Go ahead, man.
Me personally, I would. I think Philadelphia is most definitely in a win-now mode, despite Bryce Harper's 13-year contract. I would go for Nolan Arenado just because defensively he's already proven to be a generational third baseman. I mean, he rarely commits errors and lets balls go past him. Although he struggles on the road compared to home at Colorado, and that stadium is probably the reason why some of those numbers are inflated, he's one of the most reliable offensively third basemen in all of Major League Baseball. And I like the element of surprise and the upside of a prospect in Bohm. But at the same time, You've got players playing out of position that were highly touted prospects in recent years for Philadelphia. So who knows what's going to happen and how Bohm is going to pan out. And again, he's just a prospect. There's a list of top 100 of them every single season produced. If they were as good, all of them, as they were supposed to be, the MLB would have a different landscape every season, but not all of them pan out. So while I think Bohm is an exceptionally talented third baseman, and I'm excited to see what he brings, I would most definitely part ways with him if Nolan Arenado was on the receiving end.
I wouldn't. When you look at the Phillies pitching rotation, especially that back end of the rotation, man, pitching rules, man. At the end of the day, pitching is everything. There's no way, man. I can't do it. Let's move on.
You would keep Spencer Howard, right?
Yes, I would absolutely keep Spencer Howard. On Wednesday, you had the Sixers losing to the Toronto Raptors again in Toronto again. Brett Brown got outcoached again, and Ben Simmons vanished in the fourth quarter. What is your take on Ben Simmons' difficulties in that fourth quarter, man? Is it a concern, or are we just simply overreacting?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned, but I do think it's a product of the offense. I think for Ben Simmons, he's a focal point through three quarters. And even in the fourth quarter, if Ben Simmons is aggressive and in the open court, he's integral. But at the same time, when the offense is limited to a half-court offense, Ben Simmons is going to make much less of an impact. And that's why his offensive rating through the first three quarters is so impressive, but in the fourth quarter decreases. And that's because I don't think the Sixers trying to hide him, but it's because he can do a little bit less. And it becomes more obvious in the fourth quarter when 76ers, they need more point production. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a concern more than it is a product of their offense. But at the same time, it is a little disheartening knowing that your cornerstone franchise point guard is going to disappear in the fourth quarter. And I know in the previous week or two, he's had some good numbers in the fourth and he's been more productive, but you really, really, really want your cornerstone player to get to the line, initiate offense, get a basket when your team needs one. If there's 5 seconds on the shot clock, he is the basketball, as opposed to passing it out, taking that shot. So there are things that are disheartening about it, but at the same time, I think it's more so a product of the offense.
My favorite moment was Austin and I did a Party on Broad reaction to the Toronto Raptors game. And man, is there anything more annoying than a Toronto Raptors fan? That video got bombarded. If you want to go check out some crazy ass Toronto Raptors fans calling Kyle Lowry better than Ben Simmons, go check it out, man. It's pretty insane.
That's ridiculous.
Also,
that's
it's crazy, right? Oh, jeez. Also on Wednesday, you saw James Urban being named quarterbacks coach with the Ravens, Mike Kafka remaining with the Chiefs, Graham Harrell signing a 3-year extension with the USC Trojans, and Jay Gruden is now not headed to Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator. Are people literally avoiding the Eagles' offensive coordinator position, man? What's going on with this?
I mean, there's tumbleweed moving through the roads right now with the Philadelphia Eagles because they're not making any moves with their coaching staff. I know, Chris, you and I were talking before the show about what they're doing defensively, but there is vacancy at the offensive coordinator position, and yet Philadelphia is doing nothing about it right now. I'm not sure why, but at this point, it seems like it's only down to Caldwell and Deuce Staley. And honestly, I think Deuce Staley is the number one candidate for that position right now. I know that some teams have inquired about Deuce Staley potentially being a head coach. And I think because of that, Philadelphia does not want to risk losing him, and they've created continuity in the previous 3 seasons. So I'm more leaning towards Deuce Staley being promoted to offensive coordinator than I am Philadelphia going out and signing an offensive coordinator. But I stick to what I said last show. I would want Jim Caldwell here as the offensive coordinator.
I fully agree, man. I would go with Deuce Staley. I think he earned that promotion with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jim Caldwell will be an amazing hire, but I'm like one of those, I want the best mind possible for Doug Peterson in that locker room, in that front office. And last up on Thursday, we had Joel Embiid make his 3rd straight All-Star game after being named to the Eastern Conference All-Star starting lineup. I think the biggest story here, however, was how the fans didn't vote for Ben Simmons. You had guys like D. Rose, Kyle Lowry, and Zach LaVine all had more fan votes than Ben Simmons. What the hell's going on, man?
When you put the power of the voting in the hands of the fans, stuff like this occurs. The ballot was a joke this season with Alex Caruso and Taco Fall. A season prior, it was a joke when Kobe Bryant and Carmelo Anthony were receiving votes, and yet neither of them were playing in the NBA at the time. But it's a fandom, so fans vote for who they want to see in the All-Star game. But unfortunately for the fans, that's not what happens. The NBA ultimately makes the right decisions, and the coaches do alike. So when the NBA and coaches decide on the best players that should be in the All-Star game, Ben Simmons will be there. But according to the fans, he shouldn't be. And you and I know it's because he's one of the most scrutinized players in the NBA, and his negligence to shoot is why he's frequently clowned. But I saw something interesting, which I may have brought up last week. I'm not sure if I did or not. The population in Memphis, I think, is around under 700,000 people. The population in Los Angeles is over 1.2 million people, if I'm correct. And that's unfortunate for a guy like John Morant. Alex Caruso gets more votes than him because there's over 400,000 more people living in LA voting for Alex Caruso than John Morant, while John Morant should be in the All-Star game. So it's stuff like that that really affects the ballot. And I think it's unfortunate for certain players that are deserving, but this season it's going to be really interesting because I think whoever gets snubbed is going to be very upset. There's a lot of talent in both the West and East this year. And you're talking about guys in the East alone, like Kyle Lowry, Ben Simmons, Sabonis, Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton, that could get snubbed. And let alone that's given if players make it, like Bradley Beal on there or other players. So there's going to be a lot of snubs in the East and the West. And I'm curious to see how that race pans out.
Well said. It's just so fascinating, the difference between fan voting and like the media and the player voting. I've never seen this guy's defensive game just get completely overshadowed by his jump shot. It's just absolutely crazy. Any last comments before we wrap it up?
Yes, Brett Brown, if you're listening to Party on Broad, please give Trey Burke a couple of minutes, man. You played a lineup last game that consisted of Howell Neto, Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, Mike Scott, and Norv Pell. No disrespect, but you mean to tell me that Trey Burke can't even sniff the floor, but you're going to roll a lineup like that out on national TV on the road in Toronto where you have never won a game? Trey Burke over the last 7 games has played 15 minutes. Howell Neto, he's played 63. And in those 63 minutes, he's shooting 33% from deep. He's got a 45% true shooting percentage, which is 337th in the NBA. And he has a 97.1 offensive rating, which is 345th in the NBA, also allowing opponents to shoot over 50% from 3. Brett Brown, please give Trey Burke some burn.
I'd like to do a little apology, to my Party on Broad audience. I'm sorry for Furkan Korkmaz. I have dogged you for the last couple years. But, dude, this guy's becoming a real rotation player this season. I don't know what that means for the playoffs. Playoffs be damned. We'll see what the rotations look like there. But, dude, he has been shooting the lights out over the last week. Just kudos, Furkan.
The apology was as loud as the disrespect for Furkan Korkmaz, baby.
Yes, it is. Make sure you follow Brock on Twitter at LandisBrock. I'm Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. For Brock, for myself, thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
And the Sixers win it! Wow! Oh, man. Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get it.